Hey everybody, this is Linda Misegadis, and you're listening to An Unconventional Guide to Success, the show that talks about real life with real people for those of you who are interested in learning from others the steps they took on their journey towards success as defined by them. We have an exciting lineup of guests for Season 3 and hope you enjoy. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the studio. We're back with An Unconventional Guide to Success. I got it right this time. I always say An Unconventional Guide for Success, which I don't know why I do that. So
yeah, could you get it right, Linda? Just the title.
I know, for God's sakes. How many times do I have to say it to get it right? It's so good to see you. I haven't seen you in a little bit, so it's nice to see your smiling face.
Thank you. It's nice to see you too, and to hear you, because we haven't spoken or even interacted in a couple of weeks, and we're not used to that.
No, I know. It's been a little while. I know usually we're always talking to each other, so we've been a little remiss.
Well, for me, it was kids baseball. Kids baseball ate me for dinner last week and the weekend.
I don't know why you had those children, honestly. They just seemed like such an interference with everything.
Well, you have a few of your own, I might add. So, hey.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the studio, Ellen.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's so great to see you.
We're so excited.
Yeah,
absolutely. No, this is wonderful.
That baseball in the middle of Florida in July, when it's the hottest July we've ever had.
Let me immerse myself.
I was just down in Fort Lauderdale last week for a meeting, and oh my gosh, it was just stifling. I cannot take it. I'm not a hot weather person, and that hot weather was just too much. So.
Well, I got to tell you, I usually brag because I'm from DC area and moved down to Fort Lauderdale, and I usually brag that it's so much more comfortable here in the summer than up there. Yeah. And right now, I have no bragging rights. It's hot.
Yeah, you know,
it
is so true. When I got off the airport, I was standing there waiting for my wife was picking up my son and I. And when I got to DC, it was 85 degrees, and I was literally like, "Wow, it's like running weather. This is really nice out."
So good. Yeah.
So oppressively hot in Florida. I've never experienced it, and I was born and spent my summers there for many decades.
No. Well, and then it rained while we were there, so that just made it 10 times worse. So, because now not only was it ridiculously hot, the humidity, I said, I think the trees were sweating. It was just so much. So it's just crazy weather. But well, hey, let me take a minute and introduce Ellen to everyone. Yeah. Ellen is the managing principal for the Washington Coaching Group. And her mission really is to elevate the conversations leaders are having in the world and build a more robust perspective to equip organizations to take action and maximize their strategic goals, which is so important today. I was just at a training at Berkeley, and we learned about the VUCA world, which that was a new term for me, but it was very interesting. So, but she challenges clients to do their own inner work with the understanding that a leader's success is directly proportional to their self-awareness. Mm-hmm. Isn't that so true? And then really aligning strengths, clarifying values, and building the embodiment of effective communications are key underlining themes that prevail in coaching leaders to visionary results. Ellen is a master certified executive leadership coach. She has extensive experience working with leaders in government, corporations, small businesses, not-for-profits, and universities, and has worked with thousands of individuals and teams across all levels of leadership, of which Scott is one.
I was just going to say, I'm one of them. That's right.
That's right. Exactly. So we have a student on the phone as well. As associate faculty at George Mason University Center for the Advancement of Wellbeing and managing principal of the Washington Coaching Group, Ellen Fulton has stepped up to create and lead a number of outstanding coach education offerings to include the Leadership Coaching for Organizational Wellbeing program, Conversations to Mastery, and the Masterful Coaching course Practicum. In her free time, Ellen is a photographer and an avid scuba diver. Wow. With her master diver certification, something I always thought about, but never was brave enough to do. In the future, she would like to combine her passions to create experiential learning opportunities for leaders to cultivate their awareness. This could include offerings such as lessons from the deep, combining diving and coaching, or shifting apertures, combining photography and coaching. I love that concept, Ellen. I'm working with a colleague. He was actually on our podcast, Nick Kittle, and he's doing something right now that he's calling Beyond the Smoke, and he's combining barbecue and leadership coaching. And I love the idea. So you're onto something. Yeah, I'm really excited about this project that he's working on. So I can't wait to hear more about what you end up doing. So
boy, the write-up does really not quite the justice of your expertise. And I'm just so excited you're here. And just sharing with our listeners the impact that you had on my coaching experience, my certification as an ACC coach, and the impacts of my interest in sharing that executive leadership across platforms like this and in the book, as well as within my own company, have just made such an impact. And I think it's really important to spotlight and highlight that, so our viewers really, truly understand, as we're discussing what makes Ellen so awesome, these are the things that I start with. And these are the areas in which we've had a really nice intersection. So thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to what we can talk about.
Yeah, I love being with you at any point. So this will be fun. I'm appreciative of the invite.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's well. So we like to start out. Well, I like to start out with an icebreaker,
and I always chime in right here and go, no.
Yeah, and Scott always interferes with the whole conversation, but we're going to let him play.
I'll try anyway, not to.
So here's my question: if you can hang out with any cartoon character, who would you choose, and why that cartoon character?
Okay. If I could hang out with, I think this dates me a little bit with my kids, because this is the last time I was actually watching mini cartoons, but I would say Dora the Explorer. You know, that she's always on adventure. She's hanging out with her pal, a monkey. She speaks Spanish, which is a dream of mine. She's asking questions constantly, and working with people to solve things. Right? It's super fun. So
wow, you are Dora the Explorer, because all you do is ask questions.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
You're like the question queen.
I love that. That is perfect. Well, and then where you are a master diver, which also goes to the whole exploring notion as well. So that's I love that. That's perfect. What a great character.
Wow, there's a match, like a full-on match
I
here.
know.
That's awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
That is awesome. I love it. What about you, Scott? I know I've asked this before and you've given an answer, but has it changed at all? Like who are you gonna choose?
Oh, the Incredible Hulk, for sure. Because I go crazy.
What?
I go crazy on a moment's notice.
I've never experienced that, Scott.
I haven't either.
It's always for the greater good, though.
Yes. I'll give you credit that generally your crazy has some logic.
What about yours, Linda? What about yours?
Well, I definitely am a Looney Tunes. I love the Looney Tunes, and so. Last time I said Pinky and the Brain. Now I might go a little like Marvin the Martian, because, and there's a theme there, obviously, because clearly I like to take over everything. So
works for us. Works for us here today. How about it?
Yep. I'm bossy and little, I guess. So.
You're not bossy. Come on.
Oh, I know. But yeah, maybe sometimes. So, but
such a fun question. So Ellen, fun to unpack that.
Oh, yeah, I love that one, because it kind of, there's just some, and I've got a whole litany of characters that I always think about, that I'm like, if I could be that person, that character, that's who I would be. So I love that question.
I always love to add to this question in this area, and I think I've done it with others. But one of the things that I've enjoyed in raising my children since they were very young is the icebreaker when I'm transporting them, or they've shown up to the house, or who is this big, overbearing, Incredible Hulk crazy guy, right? I ask every one of them, and they're 18 now, so they love it. I ask them what their favorite color is.
I love that question.
Followed promptly by, once they answer it, and then, I remember, so we remind and we change and we have the edit, and it's a great icebreaker question. They're followed by, what is your favorite song? And when they were younger and they would fire it back to me, I would assure them my favorite song was Happy Birthday. And they just ate it up. And it really does. So that's the intention here also, is sort of the parallels of life and the simplicity of a cartoon, but it also is such a great icebreaker. We should all consider those as
It
we
is.
engage with people, because you want guards down and you want authenticity. So there's a real value to some of this stuff
Yes.
too that I love to be able to share, and that works in real life too.
No.
Yeah.
I love it. I think that's a great one. And I think you said this before, is like, who can't smile when you're singing happy birthday,
Right.
right? I mean, you can't help but smile at it. It's just, even in a restaurant, you're in the middle of a conversation and somebody's birthday is there, and they come out and they start singing happy birthday. You can't help but smile. I mean, it's just one of those songs where, if you're grumpy during happy birthday, you probably have some deep-seated, deep-rooted problems. So
That nothing an unconventional guide to success can't help. So
that's right. That's right. So let's jump right into that. So Ellen, did you always want to be an executive leadership coach? I mean, what kind of led you down the path of coaching?
I didn't know that it existed actually. So my degrees are in counseling, and I worked in higher education for quite a while, and gave it up to take care of my kids, stay home, and I ended up working in the schools and whatnot. And one of my good friends was going through a coaching program and said, "Ellen, you need to go through a coaching program." I didn't know what it was, and she said, "I think that this is a really good match for you, and if you go through, I'll hire you at at George Mason University," because she had some
Wow.
people that could use some coaching. She said it's not much, but at least it's a start,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And so I jumped in, and I kind of rewrote my story at that point, because I I I got in this class with all these highly qualified, huge leaders of international companies or businesses also within the DC area. We'd go around and introduce ourselves, and people would say, "Okay, what do you do?" "I'm the vice president at Miter. I'm I own 3 businesses in Switzerland." And I was like, "I'm a stay-home mom and work at the elementary school." And
Yeah. Power beyond
I
yeah,
love that,
that's the
though.
ultimate power. Don't underestimate it, because that's the
Yeah.
people
well,
that
yeah.
help these people get to where they're growing their businesses 20, 30, 40 years later. Yeah.
Well, the cool thing is that it really was a good match for me, and all of those people in my class were some of the ways that I really got started, because they pulled me in. They're like, "We need somebody like you. We need somebody like you," and it was a beautiful confidence boost. And
I love that.
Ellen,
That's a great
yeah,
story, because I think what that does is it sets the tone to say, because I think that a lot of times when you think about executive leadership coaching, you assume that it's going to be with these powerhouses, right? So these coaches are going to be there, and they're going to be the ones who have created these businesses, and, maybe they're multimillionaires or whatever it is. And we associate that because we think that's who we're going to learn the most from. And the fact that you came in as a stay-at-home mom and really kind of had this opportunity to bring a whole different perspective to it,
Mhm.
because that's really what people need. I was just talking to some colleagues about this yesterday, that similar to sports coaching, there are different coaches for different things. So, you've got the quarterback coach, the running back coach, all of these different and it's the same thing with leadership coaching, is that depending on the situation, you need a different coach with a different skill set to help you through that particular
Mhm.
skill or challenge or whatever is in front of you. So I really love that story.
Well, there's so
yeah,
many
yeah,
for me, Ellen, there's a lot of components in that, in the relationship aspect. And a couple of key points that I heard is that, your friend hired you after they saw the fit, and you did the needful getting trained and applying the knowledge so that you were hireable also.
yeah.
And so for our younger listeners, don't underestimate the power of relationship, is so insanely important to me, that I love that you volunteered that, and you did it in two notions.
Yeah.
And that is, not only did your friend say they would hire you if you went through the program and it seemed the right fit, but you also said those who were in your cohort pulled you through and pulled you up to the next level. And
Yeah.
you
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I even get the somatic response from that, because here we sit, Ellen, you pulled me up, you coached and certified me, and here you are on our podcast. And that's a real lesson that I love to highlight, that is not scripted. It is not a cartoon or a favorite color. It's real world. And it's really important. And that's where I'm really excited to kind of take a corner of seriousness on that and say to the listeners and viewers, you offered that as a truth. And I really believe in that as part of the equation to success, part of the equation, not the only thing, but we're demonstrating it just having you on the program, and your eagerness to be here and then share that part of the story. Really important stuff. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, Ellen, you have a quote in your book called "The Door to Leadership Opens Inward." What does that quote mean to you?
Well, I definitely believe that a leader's success is directly proportional to their self-awareness. So the hardest person to manage in any given situation is ourselves. And the better we know ourselves, the better we can separate out what's ours and what's somebody else's, right?
Yeah.
So somebody says something, the leader gets triggered right away and then responds in a way that is not helpful. Whereas if that leader understands themselves and understands their triggers, they can moderate how they're going to respond, and then manage the person, manage the situation, be with that person who is having the issue in a different way. So I really do believe that that's one of the most important qualities in a leader is self-awareness.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that, there are things that have been around forever, so like Carol Dweck's book has gotten a lot of I don't know, run these days, where everybody's now very focused in on that, being in the fixed mindset versus growth mindset, and businesses are really kind of going through this transition. I think a lot of that was triggered, one, by COVID, and two, by all the social unrest that was caused at the murder of George Floyd, and many other things that were happening during that time as well, that kind of sparked this whole different approach. And I'm starting to see that a lot more in the leadership circles, is around this focus around talking about growth mindset, self awareness, but also a lot of conversation around leadership coaching, because most people who are in leadership roles have never received any training to be a leader or a manager. Some people, you'll say that, oh, they're a natural leader. And I think there's some truth to, some people are natural born at being able to lead, but doesn't mean that you're good at it. You might be, okay at it. But what do you think besides, what do you think is sparking some of that, and why is that so important?
You were talking about the VUCA world, right?
Yeah.
Things are so uncertain these days. It's volatile, the whole nine yards. And one of the beautiful aspects about coaching somebody, being with them in their VUCA world, is supporting them in looking at themselves or looking at their issues from a whole lot of different perspectives, and expanding their capacity to hold more uncertainty. And from that place, they have more access to a variety of different ways to move forward, that they can then align with their values, with who they are and how they stand in it. And I think with that complexity that is just, I think, amplified. You brought up COVID. In COVID, because all the norms, or not all, but many of them got kind of destroyed and shifted around. And now we're trying to rebuild, and things are shifting. So an ability for a person or an organization to step back and to walk around, okay, we said we always did it this way, then we always did it this way in COVID. What's working in each of these? What do we want to create as we move forward? Right? Stepping out of that fixed mindset of it's always been and it'll always be. It's what's working, what else is possible.
What else is possible? Wow. And that's so
Yeah.
different than these fixed mindsets and the ways of the past. And I think that's a really important thing to highlight right there. As it relates to looking inward and the tools and experiences a coach can enlighten you with by holding the space for you to unpack that for what direction you want to take it. Right. And that's
Mhm.
such an important
Yep.
piece of this. I'm literally writing down meeting minutes because I'm like, there's a soundbite, there's a snippet. It's amazing to me how important what you're saying needs to be shared with the communities of folks out there. That again, I think that's a really nice segue into the inward view of why that's important. But also, it's not about the skill of what you're leading; it's about how you're leading, and
Yep.
what tools you can use and learn and improve on inward that make that better. Yeah, that's really really good stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I think those were some really good points, and I think, what we're hearing is that only the organizations that are embracing and making these shifts are the ones that are gonna be successful in the future, right? Because the world is changing, business is changing, expectations have changed. We were just talking about this. I was speaking at a conference yesterday, and one of the things that we talked a little bit about was employee expectations have changed drastically.
Mhm.
And so, as an organization, you have to be prepared because no longer are employees okay with just being a disposable asset to the organization. So,
Hmm.
I was just sitting
Yeah.
here
yeah.
thinking about like the importance of all of that we're talking about with relationships and we're coaching, but there's another aspect of that look inward that I think, Ellen, I'd love for you to touch on, and that is preparing yourself to be in your best performance and the
Hmm.
Hmm.
self-care aspect of I'm going to moderate how I'm responding and what triggers me, but also what could prepare you to not be triggered isn't simply awareness, but it's certain types of things like meditation or
Hmm.
experience or training. Do you have any ideas that you could throw out there for us and our viewers that would sort of put us in the right direction of being prepared better to open that
Hmm.
door inward? And what are like the top two or three things that you think are valuable?
You mentioned meditation. Some people kind of bulk at the idea of meditation, but really what it is focused attention, right?
Hmm.
And that ability to practice bringing your mind back, not staying in this place of
Zen.
of Zen, right? It's not about that. It's about the ability to notice when you're not there and bring yourself back. So each time you bring yourself back when you're practicing through a sitting practice or whatever you're doing, you're increasing those neural pathways to be able to come back, right? Come back, come back. And in our age of so much stimulus,
Hmm.
right? Watching our own brains go all over the place, sometimes that works for us because we get ideas and all sorts of fun things. But then when you need to dive in, how do you bring that focus back?
Hmm.
How do you bring it back? And so meditation, I believe, whatever you want to call it, focused attention,
I like focused attention.
mindfulness.
Personally, meditation does, not only do you add, squirrel and shiny new toy, but I've got ADD and hyperactivity on top of that. So that mindfulness of, and the key I think I'm driving home for people who might relate to my experience of, going
Right.
crazy, Incredible Hulk, and knowing how to open the door. That's the
Hmm.
exercise here is take a
Hmm.
minute to figure out what you can do to open your door to then be less triggered and respond accordingly. So I like
Yeah.
focused attention is huge because that puts it more in an assignment rather than it does go find your zen and calm down, which is what I think people correlate meditation to be in my
Yeah,
experience.
well, there's a million different kinds of practices for mindfulness practices. So it's
Yeah.
not all about sitting,
Right.
cross-legged with your fingers, right? You, movement.
Hmm.
There can be
Yeah.
movement meditations. So there can be for me, I step into it a lot through a lot of my passions. Like when I do photography or when I'm diving, it transports me to a place that is in flow,
Hmm.
right? The rest of the world kind of disappears, and I'm super present with whatever I'm doing, and I can't help but elicit like awe, right? And I think there's a huge power in awe, right?
Yeah.
So whether I'm diving and I'm looking at some beautiful coral or a bunch of fish that are flowing in the currents. You know, like I've seen some incredible things underwater, but also above when I'm in nature. And so the photography I do is wildlife photography, and I'm always looking for an angle that inspires awe for me,
Yeah.
right? And those things are another powerful mindfulness practice for me. And
I
so,
love that, Ellen.
yeah, the best meditation anybody can do or mindfulness practice is the one that they'll do.
Right.
Totally agree. You know, a colleague of mine, no, and that's a really
Awesome.
good point, right? Because if you're just being told to do something, but you hate every minute of it, it is not accomplishing what you set out to do. A
Right.
colleague of mine was sharing something a little, so what she learned from her coach actually was to be able to take that same situation and bring it in. So like her Zen place is in the forest mountains type of area. And obviously she can't just run off to the forest and the mountains whenever she wants to. So he said, bring it to you. So he said, take some pictures of some of those places. And then also, think about the scent, the smells. So maybe do like you can get the different potpourris or oils and that sort of stuff that kind of bring that there. And he said, when you're feeling that way, open that book and look at those pictures, take in that scent, and that will take you to that happy place when you can't be in that happy place. And just take that moment. Or even she brings it whether when she travels, because she's traveling all the time, and she needed something to help center her when she was traveling. And I was like, what a great idea, because we can't always be where we want to be, but we can bring it along with us. I thought, what an awesome idea.
Well, and just to tie that back to our listeners too, this is what you do to open yourself up for the best result in, if we're going to use leadership as the example, but also in family dynamics, in the best outputs of your photography, your best experience in diving. It's opening that door inward, which I will now probably coin, is really critical to whatever your opening the door topic is. So whether it's leadership or whether or not, and I called that peak performance in the book that I published about this topic, and I called it self-care, but you do a really nice job of diving just that next layer deeper, if you will, no pun intended. In this conversation,
or pun intended,
or pun intended, which is what is the real nice value of where we started in our conversation around. We've got books, we've got podcasts, we've got resource, and we have these important things that you're doing a really nice job of describing. So again, just tying back the notion of the comprehensive view, it's another really important lens to find your awe, if that's the word we'll use today, to achieve your happy result or successful result in whatever you're dealing with. Right. So just taking that a step further. And for me, my meditation is running for sure. I love to run. I love to eat too. That's another favorite meditation. So that's typically out of balance, but but I do my best. I do my best thinking when I'm eating or running. So doesn't necessarily.
Well, you know what? There's a little balance in that, right? You're burning off the calories that you're taking in, so that's not so terrible.
But I'm really glad
I love that.
People finding whatever that is, though.
Right.
Giving themselves that space, because, like you said, Scott, you can tap into that really fast if that's a place and a sensation and a feeling really well. When you're in a really stressful situation or you're thinking about your stressful situation, to get back to that place
of clarity.
When exactly like you were saying, you can trigger that even if you're not in it, but then handle or deal or look into that issue from that
place,
mind space.
Yes.
And it's going to open up huge possibilities.
Well, and likely less stress, yes, exactly. That's really a nice icing to that part of it, because that's the result here. It's not right or wrong. It's your best peak performance against issue, against adrenals against
Mhm.
success
Yeah.
and happiness and end result, right? All of those things are really important because there's no prescription to the issue you're dealing with except for the door inward on how you're going to approach it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Which all ties back to what you were talking about, Ellen, which is self-awareness, right? Is you've got to figure that out. It took me a long time to figure out anxiety. So I thought I was just having some breathing issues. I was like, oh, well, the air must be really bad today, or oh, my allergies must be kicking in. And it took me a while to actually go, that has nothing. It was anxiety, and I didn't realize it
Yeah.
because my chest would get tight, and I'd kind of feel a little bit of short of breath, and I'd be like, gosh, what's going on? Well, as I started to become more self-aware and looking inward and saying, oh, you know what? You're feeling a little anxious about what you've got going on today, or, maybe something's stressing you out. Let's kind of take a minute, reflect on that. Doesn't necessarily make the anxiety go away right away, but at least I've got that awareness now and I can go, oh, maybe I'll do a little breathing technique. Maybe I'll do something, just to kind of calm my mind. But until you can get to that place of self-awareness and looking inward, you have
Yeah.
no idea what's going on. So you just make
Well, and
assumptions.
and just in the spirit of moving this along, I know one of the questions we're going to talk about is relationships and partnerships, but I want to piggyback
Yeah.
off of what Linda, one of the things our viewers may or may not know about Linda and I is that we've experienced pretty significant tragedy at about the same time. And one of the
Mhm.
things that I'll never forget as long as I live is literally sitting in her car driving to a meeting shortly after my brother's funeral, and we were in each other's misery. Another important aspect of opening the door inward and finding where you can meditate or do your thing that finds awe is being with someone. I know that Linda and I have lifted each other through these tragedies, and I know that we have talked about these things, and they're also really important to play off each other. She has things that fit for her that I think are crazy. She thinks I'm crazy and sometimes finds something that fits for her. So, it's really, I just wanted to segue into the dynamic of that's one of the reasons you're here, Ellen, is that you are such a contributor to the book. It's one of the reasons Linda and I are actually doing this podcast. It's another layer
Yeah.
of really important things that once you have that inward or self-awareness, and we're just scratching surfaces here, you also have each
Yeah.
other. So if I may move this along, Ellen, talk to us a little bit about your partnerships or your relationships that maybe help you find
Yeah.
your awe, help you find your
Mhm.
inward view, just to
Yes.
give these examples because they're everyday examples. And I think oftentimes
Hmm.
people think there's some magical kingdom they're not tapping into. They're not educated enough or they didn't get the training. Maybe if they listen to our podcast, you can enlighten somebody.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, it's such an interesting concept, and as I hear you talk about that, I think about my path and how that's unfolded, right?
Yep.
And um, I've always kind of, maybe downplayed and said, "Oh, I've been lucky. The right doors opened at the right
Hmm.
times. I this and that." And actually, reading your book helped me take some ownership around the things I intuitively knew and did. Right, like I find somebody I connect with, I bond, we talk about exciting things, and I go into it. Right,
Hold
like
on tight
I,
and hold on tight. I
yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, and then I have the benefit of always doing things I love,
Mhm.
right? So I'm
Right.
following my passions with people I'm passionate about and
Yeah.
with. And it has opened every door that has ever
Oh, I
been
love it.
opened for me,
Right?
you
Oh
know?
my God, can this. Please, somebody can this. It's so important.
Well, and I love that what you just said, Ellen, was that it is that we do that all the time. We downplay things. Well, I just stumbled into that opportunity, or I guess I was just lucky. We don't really look at it that it has been our path, our journey, the people that we've met along the way. Scott and I talk about this. There are no self-made millionaires. There's no self-made anyone. You have had someone who has impacted your life, good or bad, because even the bad impacts
Mhm.
have trained us and we've learned something from it. And so I think that really kind of plays into what you were just talking about there. Is take that ownership
Mhm.
and really kind of lean into this notion that nothing is just by chance. There has been something that has led up to that.
Well, and it's typically,
Yeah.
and where I was going with that is relationships and partnerships as well. Like, who are the people that have influenced you, Ellen, that have, I mean, I hear your friend at Mason and I hear this opportunity, but I'm gonna challenge you to go just one a little deeper for us and just talk about, you know, those,
Yeah.
because good and bad. I know I literally can
Yeah.
make Linda crazy, but she also knows she can call me anytime and vice versa. You
Yeah.
know, so
Yeah.
there is an element of imperfection that I kind of want to spotlight through this next level of, sure, someone helped you get promoted and sure you had a mentor, but what do you look for? Like maybe even talk about us, Ellen, because I feel the same about you and I know you feel the same about me, but you know, I'm just trying to poke at that a little bit for our viewer or listener's sake. You know, like,
Yeah.
what is that? It's intangible, but what is it? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Ellen, what's this
Yeah, exactly. Good luck. Good luck with that, by the
I know
way.
it's a terrible question, put on the spot,
Yeah.
but um, I think for me, because I can only speak for
Yep.
me, my curiosity is one of my main tools, and I get to listen to others and be that part that then sparks their ideas, which sparks my ideas, and then we get to build off each other and we decide to kind of partner, right?
Yep.
And I think, Linda, as you were saying, kind of that taking ownership, like the difference of me being intentional about that
Yeah. Yep.
opens up even more
Mhm.
doors, right? So I'm like,
Yes.
oh, Scott. And you and I pinged each off of each other from the very beginning. We
Mhm.
didn't know if we'd ever do anything together or not, but we both set the intention. Yeah, let's do something, and we'll
Mhm.
keep our eyes open for what's possible down the line.
Mhm.
I think that that's part of that aspect. And in your book, you talk about the kite and the string with you and Caitlin, right?
Mhm.
And how she's a little bit of an anchor. And I think of that for myself in every single one of my different partnerships. My wife Wendy is how should we say, she's got more of an edge. She's she's a driver. She her default isn't necessarily giving people the benefit of the doubt, right?
Wow. No,
She's
I'm just kidding.
she's wonderful, but she comes from a lawyer perspective,
Sure.
Yeah.
looking for
Sure.
Yeah.
problems,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And so she always likes to talk about the story of if we're on the street in a back alley and a mugger's coming at us. So Wendy's in the front. Wendy tackles him to the ground, and it's not pretty. She says, if I'm in front, I listen to them, I get their life story, they decide they want to give up crime and they're enrolled in community college, right? Who loves to tell that story? Sometimes you need the muscle
100%.
and the
Yep.
strength to move forward, the courage there.
Yeah.
Then sometimes you need the compassion and the love. And so that partnership helps us elevate together to different places.
Yeah.
Elevating
I like that.
together.
That's a great story. I love that one.
Well,
That
it's
that's what
fantastic.
she
And
used.
elevating each
Yeah.
other is really, I love that you actually went real deep with your wife, my wife, and these really core relationships that are outside of business. But the fundamentals of lifting each other actually can apply at
Yeah.
many different levels: loyalty, lifting each other, open communication, being ready for
Yeah.
the next opportunity is that door
Yeah.
inward, right? And having that door
Yeah.
open is all the other things we've been chatting about. And it really does
Yeah.
become a collective that I work towards, that I've been calling or labeling success. Doesn't always
Yeah.
equal money, and it doesn't always equal a promotion,
Right. Yeah.
Right.
but it can equal a podcast of
Yeah.
good people trying to pay it forward, right?
Yeah.
Well, and that's kind of the whole point, right? Is it's an unconventional guide to success.
Right.
How you define that success is different because it could be success in self-awareness. It could be success in, kind of finding yourself along the way to be able to go, I'm in a good place right now. It doesn't have to be that, hey, I made my first million or I got that big old
Yeah.
promotion or things like that. Like that isn't necessarily what is at the heart of success.
Right.
And I think if you get to the root of most happy, successful people, because there's a lot of successful people that are not happy and are not enjoying that success. Find those people that are happy and successful. I think that you find that they're very grounded in the things that we've been talking about, and they know what actually makes them successful has really nothing to do with that business side of it. It is really more of like that personal foundation that they've built
My
around
God, say that
them.
again. We need that snippet to be recaptured, because that's exactly, well, and that's just so fundamental. And I think people, overlook that. And I think that's the message we're really trying to share.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes. No, it's very true.
I also
Well,
believe that that's one of the benefits of coaching, right? Like, so
yes.
real coaching supports the person in figuring out, and this is coach term, who they be,
Yeah.
right? In any given situation, who are you going to show up as? What's
Yeah.
really aligned with your own vision, mission, purpose in life, right? And if you're showing up, Scott mentioned authentic and
Yeah.
yourself, and in your as your best self in any given situation, I me personally believe that that's going to elevate success greater than any other factor, is
Yeah.
really stepping into that.
No, I think that's a really good point. Well, and along that, we've talked a little bit about coaching, but let's talk a little bit about mentoring, because those are a little bit different. And who's been your most important professional mentor throughout your career? And I'm sure you've had many of them, but if
Yeah.
you could, think about, like, is there one that made that huge impact
And the
on you?
differentiator, again, that, not necessarily around business or anything, just in life, maybe, between
Yeah.
coaching and mentoring. It's really important to create a distinction here too, I think, so that people understand
Mm-hmm.
the value of both. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is a really complicated one for me, partially because in coaching, I get to learn from every single person. Yes, I'm
Oh,
a
good
kind of an
point. Yeah.
observer on the wall, but in a weird way, there's mentoring that I'm receiving when I'm in a coaching relationship. So,
Yeah.
but that's kind of a side note. I've had so many people along the way that have really supported me. Pat Matthews was one of my mentor coaches when I was um, working on credentialing, and really supported me in stepping into. There's different credentialing with the ICF, and there's um, the Master Certified Coach. That type of coaching, that style of coaching, it's not like the mid-level plus, not PCC
Mm-hmm.
plus. There's a different aspect of that, and how you show up, and how you're in partnership, and your presence, right? And I think that she had a huge impact there. My very first business partner with the Washington Coaching Group was he is an exquisite businessman. That was his background. And we worked together for many, many years. And I learned so much there, following his footsteps. I remember my very first client right after school was very high up in an organization,
A
and
little
I was
intimidating, I bet. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was intimidated, and on my way, and I was talking to Chris, and he said, "Ellen, everybody puts their pants on the same way each day."
Beautiful.
I
You
like
know,
that.
Yep.
and
Yes.
it really supported me in being able to step into things.
No, I like that for
That's a
sure.
really nice thing, because I remember when I was climbing the corporate ladder, I always thought everyone had this brass ring that I was unachievable, that I was not going to see or get to hold until I got a
Mm-hmm.
degree, or until I got there. And you
Hmm.
bringing up, and it's the Marsha Brady adage, picture them in their underwear, or the Brady Bunch, I don't remember who. Picture them in their underwear,
Yeah,
they're all putting their pants on the same way, has such a different meaning as you go through your decades of autonomy in life. But if we can
yeah,
we can highlight that for young viewers trying to figure that out, there's no special brass ring, people. There's no
No.
yeah,
special
Mm-mm.
equation. They're not better or smarter or different. They have potentially used their door inward to make that journey less painful. But that
Yep.
journey is not always selected by those who are in it.
I think you're right. We do kind of get caught up in the illusion of grandeur, of thinking, oh, well, that's the president or the CEO, or it's this movie star or whoever it is. And we get very caught up in the mystique behind it all. But at the end of the day, people are just people, and they've gotten there because they worked really hard. Maybe they did get a lucky break. Maybe their parents helped lift them up, or through all of it, but it all still ties back to the fundamentals that I think you tried to call out in your book, How Did You Get Here, which is around relationships, partnerships, self-care, habits, goals. It all plays in because every single successful person has followed that path in some way. They're not, to your point, they're not any more special than you are.
Right.
It's just they've found their path forward, and I think that is really important for younger people and listeners, or even those in mid in their career who are maybe kind of stuck in a rut, to look at that and go, "There's a path forward for everyone. It's just not always the same path, and it's not always the same journey." Hence, kind of the whole
It's
purpose
not,
of what we've been
it's not,
talking
and it
about.
is the whole purpose of the title of the book. And I'll tell you one interesting thing that's happening to me around the college degree aspect of it. And you two have been along for this journey. And I think it's important for those who maybe don't choose that path, but think that that has some sort of a brass ring behind it. Well, all it
Yeah,
has is a spot on my wall. And quite
yeah.
frankly, competition from other schools that it competes with in sports comes to me. But getting a college degree does not yet solve anything at all. And it's an
Well,
interest.
did your life change the next day, Scott? I mean, like after they handed you your degree, did all of a sudden like your whole life change for you?
No.
Well, Ellen, we like to end our podcast with three questions. So what is a common myth about your job or field of expertise?
That the coach is going to come in and solve the problem. And
Oh, yeah.
really, the coach is going to come in and be with the true expert of it,
Yeah,
the client, and support them in, just like we were talking about, figuring out who they need to be in
yeah,
order to solve the problem, what their own resources are to look at the problem, what mindset, what they might want to do to solve the problem, who else can they bring in to solve the problem. um, but the coach isn't solving the problem. The coach isn't teaching or telling. The coach is walking with and challenging thinking and supporting thinking.
And so
I love that.
don't misconstrue the fee of a coach as not a consultancy dollar.
Right.
Right. That's the thing where
Yeah.
people get hung up because they're paying for the coach and they're asking for someone to help them expose the things we've been talking about for an hour, but it's still the problem of the recipient to solve their problem. We're just helping open that
Yeah.
door inward to make the best
Yep.
result as
No,
coaches.
I like that
Yeah,
one. That's a good one for
that's
sure. Because
excellent.
I know I went into coaching thinking that, like, okay, I have these crazy expectations, like, I'm going to solve all my problems and all the answers are going to be there. And that's not what happened at all. But I've learned so much along the way. And so I'm glad you said that, because I think that really helps. So that was a really good one. What
Yeah.
is the most important lesson you've learned over your career?
Well, there's so many, but I think one that stands out is it's most of the time it's not about me. It's not
I like
about
that.
you.
Yeah.
When you're interacting with somebody, there's their entire morning before, their entire history, their interactions, if they slept well, they didn't, their stories they're creating, and and to remember it's not about me, right?
Yeah.
And to be
That's a
with
great one.
somebody in their stories about it, in their reality, in their aspect.
That's a good one. My husband says that to me all the time. He's like, "It's not about you, Linda. It's about how I'm feeling in this moment." And he's right. I find myself doing that. That is a lesson I've not learned myself yet. It's like I've got to remember in that moment. It's about how he's feeling, how he's reacting to the situation. It's not about how I feel or how I'm reacting to it. And to be there present in that moment and hear his truth and what he's feeling, sometimes that's the hardest thing to do. So I love
Absolutely.
that. That's a really good one for sure. It's not about
Yeah.
me, and that's a good one for sure. So my last one is, what's one lesson your job has taught you that you think everyone should learn at some point in their life?
Oh, Scott, I bet you'll
I know, I
remember
did.
this one.
I think I know what you're going to say.
I constantly say that the greatest gift you can give anybody is to be fully present with them.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. That is so important. Is we find ourselves, and you said it right at the beginning, was we live in such a distracted world. And so we're constantly looking at other things and doing other things. And just, is the world going to end because you took those 5 minutes to be fully present with the person that's in front of you, or the experience that you're, that beauty, that picture? I'll bet you stop and enjoy that moment before you take those pictures, so that you can really be present in it and not miss it because you're just trying to catch that photo. So
Yeah, and when you're fully present with somebody, you're giving them that gift, but it is a gift for yourself too,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because back to the book, I really believe that connection, that relationship, that moment is probably one of the most important things in life.
Well, it's so
Totally agree.
systemic
I
too.
love it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate
Yeah.
that. And I appreciate you referencing back the book, because while the book does sort of touch on all these different aspects, we've done a really, really great podcast today around bringing it together cohesively and not making it about learning our lesson. It's about exposing lessons to you for trying these different paths of self-reflection and opening up the inward door. And I think that's really,
Yeah.
really important. That's really, really good way to sort of wrap up what we're saying here. So I appreciate
I totally
that.
agree.
And you taught all this,
Well,
Ellen.
thank you. Yes, exactly. Thank you so much for being in the studio with us today. I can certainly see why Scott made the connection and why the two of you have stayed linked over all these years. It's pretty evident in what you bring to that relationship, that partnership, and I look forward to getting to know you even better over the years as well.
I appreciate you both. Thanks for doing this.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of An Unconventional Guide to Success. If you want to learn more about Ellen Fulton, you can follow her on LinkedIn. Her profile is in the show notes. An Unconventional Guide to Success is an inspirational, motivated series hosted by Scott Montgomery and Linda Misegadis, recorded on Riverside.fm. Music, editing, and production by Logan Misegadis. Check out Scott Montgomery's new book, How Did You Get Here, and all the helpful related materials at www.howdidyougethere.com. Thank you for joining us on our journey. If you would like to reach out to us, our contact information is in the show notes.